The thoughts and opinions of Skylar Sylvie expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of the Grimm Times podcast or Jeff Jarman. Thank you and enjoy the show. All right, hello and welcome to the Grimm Times podcast. This is episode number 5. This is going to be a split episode as well. This is going to be the first half. We're going to talk about demonic possession, exorcisms, things like that. And then in the second half, we're going to discuss Noah from the Bible and Noah's Ark and all. You know the story. And so I am Jeff Jarman of the Jeff Jarman Show on YouTube. Check that out if you haven't. And Skylar Sylvie is my co-host. He's also been a big part of the Jeff Jarman Show, and he has a few other projects that he has on the side. You can check out our Facebook pages. We both have Twitters. I'm at Jeff Jarman55. He is at Skylar Sylvie. And yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into the episode now. We'll start with the demonic possessions. Let's see. I guess I'll start out first, if that's all right with you.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So basically, it depends. I mean, some people, if you're not religious, then you might not believe in demons. I'm very, I wouldn't say religious, but I know there's a God, and I believe a good portion of the Bible, and so I mean, it's all up to interpretation, I guess. But I think it's better to study, the facts and evidence rather than just listen to what somebody has to tell you about it. But I'm getting off subject here. Anyway, so for these different things that happen, demons they kind of feed on humans, as far as I understand, and sometimes they will inhabit the human body. They'll try and take it, and
kind of like AIDS.
Almost. But it's almost worse because the demon would be trying to get, your soul, essentially. But and there have been tons of movies made about it, all this stuff, and some of the perspective may be a little lost on certain instances of film portraying this. But anyway, it's a very sensitive subject because there's so many different theories on it. I mean, okay, let's say that you find somebody who you think is possessed. It starts out as very minor. When a demon takes possession of you, they start out with just, you'll hear noises in your house, different little things here and there, and it'll be kind of weird. And then eventually they'll start to really show up, and they'll start to wear you down. And that's what they need to do, is make you weak and kind of submissive to whatever they want to do. Like they'll scare you all the time, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Like parents of teenagers.
Almost. But yeah, they wear you down over time. I mean, they don't haunt the house. So even if you leave your house, they can still be with you. And that's a big problem. And usually these possessions, they happen to people who aren't overly religious. They don't really believe in anything. And they're more susceptible because they don't have any sort of protection. And I know, Skylar, you'll probably argue this point, but I'm just saying from my own perspective.
Yeah, I already have a whole argument lined up for just that one point.
Okay, well, let me wind this up here, and then I'll let you take off. So basically, after they wear you down, that's when they would basically take over. And I mean, a possession can range from just an occasional outburst, occasional anger fits, and things like this, to where it could be a full-fledged, like, they need to start an exorcism. And if there is no exorcism, if they can't get approved, over time, Father Malachi Martin was probably the best exorcist of all time. I'm not sure if he's still alive now or not, but he's performed over 200 exorcisms in his lifetime. And some are so simple as they could be over in half an hour. Some can take a week or 2 weeks. I mean, some could take a month. It just depends on how serious the case is and how the person who is possessed has to fight it. They have to be willing and strong enough to help fight this thing and get it out of their body. And so that's a big part of it. And it's just so hard nowadays to get an exorcism approved. I mean, if you're not a member of a church, it's almost impossible to get your exorcism approved. You would have to go almost all the way to the Vatican. But say you are a member of a church and you know somebody who you think is possessed. You have to take them to several psychiatrists, usually at least 3 psychiatrists, and have them give the okay that no, this isn't just a mental disorder. It's actually something more than that. And after that, you have to meet with the priest, and he will kind of figure it out. And I mean, there's different ways of doing it. Like, say, they would take just a thing of water from the tap, and they would say that it's holy water when really it isn't, and they would throw it on the person. And if they are affected by it and it's not actually holy water, then clearly they most likely are not actually possessed. They would just be faking it. But if they are affected, or I mean, if they're not affected by it at all, then there's a pretty good chance they would know what's going on. And so there's all these different steps you have to go through and loopholes to get approved for the exorcism. And I mean, some exorcisms don't go well at all. A lot of times the person won't survive. Um, Sometimes they will, and it all depends. I mean, it's so subjective. It depends on the person and the seriousness of the deal. And the worst case scenario is if they never get help and they just live with this, and eventually they just let it take over completely, and they will be considered under a state that the Catholic Church calls perfectly possessed. If you are perfectly possessed, there's pretty much no coming back from that. I've never heard of a case of somebody coming back from that. They have given over complete control. They pretty much don't exist anymore. And it's essentially a demon walking down the street in a human body, and they own it until it dies. And I mean, apparently there are a lot of people who are like that. I mean, you'd be surprised, especially in a place like New York City, you could have several people walking down the street who are perfectly possessed, and there's nothing that can be done about it. I mean, maybe that's where some of the evil in the world comes from. Maybe they get into the government. Maybe, I mean, who knows, the shadow government and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that could be a whole different subject alone, but some think the shadow government could be extraterrestrial. Some think it could be demonic. Some think that it's both, that aliens are demons. I mean, I don't know, but I got off topic a little bit. Skylar, I'll let you go ahead and throw out your argument.
Well, my first question, and I have a question here. This guy Malachi, whatever. Where was most of his possessions taking place?
I'm pretty sure it was all over the world. I mean, he did a lot of them in the United States, though, as well. But he's been flown
Well,
into places like Australia. I mean, wherever, they really have a serious case that he needs to attend to.
well, the point of the question is that a lot of your possessions happen uh, in countries that are third world. And the reason why this happens is simply because of modern medicine and therefore the lack of in those areas. So, the overall issue being is that, like, if a person had schizophrenia, then back in the day, I'm guaranteeing here, back in the day, whenever possession was first brought up in the day, that a lot of these people who had been considered possessed actually had schizophrenia. Now, or not just schizophrenia, but let's say epilepsy, where they just broke out in seizures and shit. You know, pretty sure that's epilepsy. But the basic point is they just randomly break out and freaking, having seizures and foaming at the mouth or, whatever. So the overall point is there's actually this one in Africa where there's these priests. They're tribal. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in any of the modern religions. I forget the name of the actual tribe. But the point is that they believe in these possessions and they happen. There's this person that actually had there are these people that in that country that actually would break out in seizures and shit. And the irony is they would put this leaf, or whatever, they had this leaf like a crown leaf, and they put it around their head, and they'd say that this killed the demon. Or didn't kill the demon, we got the demon to leave. Well, the irony is it was found that the chemicals in that leaf actually helped curb the side effects of epilepsy. So the irony being the plain and simple fact that a lot of these possessions, quote, quote, are actually mental diseases. Some of these, like psychiatrists that you have to take this possessed person to, who's to say they're not Catholic or they're not religious in some fashion, who might look at their religion and everything first. See, I'm very skeptical of not just the Catholic Church, which is, I'm a huge skeptic of them, but also the overall religion in general. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have a little bit of trouble buying the word of a priest whenever the reputation of the church is curing childhood diseases with fucking them in the butt. So, and that obviously curing childhood diseases being a very morbid joke is at the point that I am very much against the Catholic Church and have been, well, even whenever I was a religious person, I was against it. Because it's just, they seem to follow their human traditions over their religious, uh, their religious incentive. So, like, they practice, like, everybody practices freaking, Christmas. But the irony is, there's not one place in the Bible that says you have to celebrate Christmas at this specific time. That is a human tradition. So, and then so there's all these different aspects of it. But back to the whole possession thing, what was it you had stated that the atheists or non-believers or whatever more susceptible to it? Well, in my belief, not once, you cannot show me a single individual who is actually a true believer in God. The reason why I say this is because a belief, when you believe in something, it's an implication that you do more than think about it. Not necessarily that you obsess over it, but that's a factor, but more on the lines of you live by whatever you believe in. If you believe in cars, you drive cars. If you believe in this, you believe in that. But the funny thing about belief is you're not always, you're always doing it, in whatever you believe in. If you sin, you're a sinner, okay, and you're a Christian, and that within itself is a contradiction. So if you're, as the term goes, God-fearing, which, by the way, makes no logical sense, but if you're God-fearing, then you wouldn't be sinful. Therefore, you shouldn't be sinful if you're God-fearing and you do not, and you believe in the whole thing, then you shouldn't sin. You should go through every effort to not do it.
Well, I think a lot of people do.
I don't think they do. You see, I think a lot of Christian people only go to church because other people they know go to church or because their family goes to church. If a true believer in God, number one, wouldn't even have sex out of wedlock, they wouldn't be doing anything. But honestly, a true believer in God would freaking kill every woman that was a victim of rape.
Stone them?
They would. Yeah, stone them to death. A true believer in God would kill every individual working on Sunday. So the overall point here is simply that you can't nobody can actually say they're a true believer in God in the sense that, or I'm going to rephrase everything. Not a believer in God, just a believer in the religion. I'll rephrase that. Believing in God and believing in the religion are two separate things.
Yeah, very different.
So, but a true believer in the religion wouldn't do half of the things. A true believer in religion would be protesting freaking rid abortion. A true believer in whatever religion, in that religion, wouldn't be doing any of those things. So the fact of the matter is that the argument that the demons possess only those individuals is a vague statement, basically a statement that's suggesting that they'll possess anyone.
Well, yeah.
I'm just saying, like, if you're a true believer in the religion, you wouldn't be having sex with little boys.
Yeah, exactly. That whole deal is so nasty. I don't even know how or where that even started. I mean, I'm sure it's hundreds of years ago, probably.
Well, it's basic human psychology. These people swear to never have sex and live a life of that. And so you have sexual tension building within them over a long period of time, and there you go.
Yeah, so really it'd be better if they would just let them have a wife. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, where does it say anything about celibacy in the Bible? It does under if you had to get married first, and it says that. But as far as the whole, well, actually, that's not true. I mean, it does and it doesn't. It depends on which part of the Bible you're talking about. In the Old Testament, it actually states if you have sex with a virgin, then you're married. as long as she is. Actually, if you're six-foot virgin, you have to pay the father, and then you are married.
Huh.
And this having sex doesn't necessarily have to be consensual either. It can be rape. So the irony is when people dog these Muslims for the very same thing, and they're Christian, they are actually the pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah.
Because read the Old Testament. You read the Old Testament, you will a logical, sincere, honest, moral person. If they read the Old Testament, they would become atheist, or at the very least agnostic, where they at least necessarily didn't believe in the religion but believed in God, or which actually I think the fact that if you were a true moral person, you wouldn't believe at least in that God, because that God is a psychotic, murdering psychopath. Flood the earth,
I
which
mean,
leads into the next topic.
yeah, now that we have about 4 minutes left in the podcast. Um, yeah, I think we could get through this one fairly fast. Basically, we were going to cover just a few random thoughts on the Noah's Ark story. Skylar, go ahead and put your part in, and then I'll add to it.
Okay, my part in this is that the Noah story, the concept of Noah and the ark, number one, beyond the point, which is illogical, which this point just gets pretty much beat to death in the sense that, oh my God, I'm going to take every single animal on Earth and I'm going to make them walk in single file lines and two of the opposite gender, but they will actually sing in single file, including every fly and every insect and every animal, and they'll walk in single file into my fucking boat. Willingly. Is a very logical concept. Not to mention, let's just rid that whole point. The Epic of Gilgamesh came out way a long time ago by the ancient Sumerians, which is actually the first known civilization. And I say known because we don't. That's the earliest of civilizations we know about so far. And they actually wrote this thing called the Epic of Gilgamesh, which almost exactly matches everything in the story of Noah in the Bible, all the way down to the fucking dove flying out the window to land on something to determine whether or not the earth's still flooded.
Huh.
So the overall point is, you look at that, and you say, yeah, that's a little bit of an issue there, because if you look at that, you say, well, then what other things were copied? Ten Commandments was copied. That came out of Egyptian text. So, almost exactly.
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, like with the flood thing, the more reference points we have, like with it being in the original Epic of Gilgamesh or whatever it was, that's just, it's kind of like if it was in one newspaper, then it's probably going to be in a lot of other newspapers too if it actually happened.
Well, the problem with it is, one, that both stories focus on two different parts of the Middle East. That's one. Two is that, there's other cultures that talk about a flood story. Everybody's got a flood story. But the Epic of Gilgamesh is funny because its timeline dates not only prior to Noah, but it came out prior to Noah. And the funniest part is where Noah tries to instill this God thing in there. The Sumerian text more implies a series of gods, or the God of gods. So there's not really, there's not. It's like the same thing rewritten for the context of a separate religion. So it's like a purposeful freaking plagiarism is how it comes off.
Well,
So and there's several of those in that Bible. In fact, I can sit here and pull out all day long freaking alien stuff out of the Bible that has a lot of obvious, almost obvious alien reference. And in fact, which one sounds more logical here? Okay, and even though both of these sound far-fetched, but which one is more probable? Is it more likely that the story of Noah or Gilgamesh was an actual literal boat? Because it only says it's an ark. It doesn't say it's an actual boat floating on the water. Okay?
that's true.
So which one's more logical? Was it a giant boat this guy manufactured and lined animals single file into the boat? Which, by the way, we're talking everything down from a predator to a freaking plant eater, which would, by the way, eat each other. or on Earth, all of them? Or is it more logical to suggest that it was actually some, let's say, an alien in a UFO that got the DNA of every animal and flew off, and that Dove was actually just a smaller ship, and that big ship that was the Ark was actually a big mothership that hoarded all of this DNA, while while the Earth was being flooded to rid the Earth of imperfections that were created by that God, whether that God be alien, like extraterrestrial, or some mystical entity that looks like Santa.
Well, there's a lot of different areas we could go off into here. I think we're at the end of this podcast now, so we're gonna have to wrap this one up. The good thing is, though, we have plenty more podcasts to come. Once again, thank you all for listening. This is Jeff Jarman. Skylar, did you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, go play Halo.
If you listen to the last episode, you'll know what that reference is. Listen to what somebody has to tell you about it. But I'm getting off subject here. Anyway, so for these different things that happen, demons they kind of feed on humans, as far as I understand, and sometimes they will inhabit the human body. They'll try and take it, and
Kind of like AIDS.
almost. But it's almost worse because the demon would be trying to get your soul essentially. But and there have been.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So basically, it depends. I mean, some people, if you're not religious, then you might not believe in demons. I'm very. I wouldn't say religious, but I know there's a God, and I believe a good portion of the
Sorry.
Bible, and so I mean it's all up to interpretation, I guess. But I think it's better to study the facts and evidence rather than just. The thoughts and opinions of Skylar Sylvie expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of the Grimm Times podcast or Jeff Jarman. Thank you and enjoy the show. All right, hello and welcome to the Grimm Times podcast. This is episode number 5. This is going to be a split episode as well. This is going to be the first half. We're going to talk about demonic possession, exorcisms, things like that. And then in the second half, we're going to discuss Noah from the Bible and Noah's Ark and all. You know the story. And so tons of movies made about it, all this stuff, and some of the perspective may be a little lost on certain instances of film portraying this. But anyway, it's a very sensitive subject because there's so many different theories on it. I mean, okay, let's say that you find somebody who you think is possessed. It starts out as very minor. When a demon takes possession of you, they start out with, so I am Jeff Jarman of The Jeff Jarman Show on YouTube. Check that out if you haven't. And Skylar Sylvie is my co-host. He's also been a big part of The Jeff Jarman Show, and he has a few other projects that he has on the side. You can check out our Facebook pages. We both have Twitters. I'm at Jeff Jarman55. He is at Skylar Sylvie. And yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into the episode now. We'll start with the demonic possessions. Let's see. I guess I'll start out first, if that's all right with you.